You know that moment when you finally realize the only thing that's ever truly held you back is the story you've been telling yourself. Because right now, as you're listening to me, there's a part of you that knows you're capable of far more than what your life reflects. And yet something inside has been whispering limitations, planting doubt, convincing you to play small. And I want you to hear me. Those beliefs were never yours. They were given into you, accepted by you. But they do not define you. We all grow up surrounded by invisible walls. Sometimes they come from our parents, sometimes from society, sometimes from a moment in our past that hurt us so deeply we closed a part of ourselves off, and we think those walls protect us. But in reality, they trap us, they shrink our potential, they suffocate our dreams. And somewhere inside, you start believing the lie, maybe I'm not enough, maybe I'm not capable, maybe I'm not meant for more. But listen to me. Those beliefs are nothing but illusions. You were born with infinite potential, unlimited creativity, and the internal power to rewrite your entire story. And the moment you decide to challenge those beliefs, truly challenge them, everything begins to shift. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you dared to question the rules you've been living by? When was the last time you looked at your life and said, who told me I have to settle for this? Who told me this is all I can be? Most people never do. They live trapped inside a mental prison built from fear, failure, and what other people think. They hold on to beliefs like, I always mess up, I'm not smart enough, I'm too late, I don't deserve more. But those beliefs crumble the moment you stand up and say, this is not my truth. Right now, I want you to imagine the strongest version of yourself. The version you know exists deep inside. The version that's confident, passionate, relentless, unshakable. That version of you has been waiting, fighting, pushing against the limits you've placed around yourself. And today, that version of you gets to walk free. Because a belief is nothing but a feeling of certainty about something. Change the feeling, change the meaning, change the belief. And when you change your beliefs, you change your decisions. Your decisions change your actions. Your actions change your entire destiny. You don't break limiting beliefs by wishing. You break them by confronting them, by challenging them, by replacing them with the truth of who you really are. You break them the moment you say, I am done living small. I am done letting fear make my choices. I am done believing stories that were never mine. And the truth is, you've had glimpses of your strength before. There were moments when you surprised yourself, moments when you rose higher, moments when you felt the power inside you igniting. But life has a way of pulling you back into the familiar patterns. Today, you break that pattern. Today, you break the cycle. Today, you reclaim the identity that was taken from you. Everything begins with one decision, one moment of absolute clarity, one moment where you say, this ends now. Because the life you want, the growth, the joy, the success, the confidence, it all lives on the other side of the beliefs you've been afraid to challenge. And once you break through them, you don't just change your life. You transform who you are. So hear me, you are not your past. You are not your fears. You are not your doubts. You are not the stories that were handed to you. You are the creator of your destiny. You are the author of your future. And you are the force strong enough to shatter every limitation that ever tried to hold you down. Today is the day you break through. Today is the day you rise. Today is the day you reclaim the masterpiece that is you. When you finally pause long enough to hear the stories running in the background of your mind, you begin to recognize how many of them you never chose. They were shaped by your childhood, by the people you trusted, by failures that wounded you, by moments when life hit you harder than you expected. And without realizing it, those stories start dictating how you show up in the world. They tell you who you are, what you're capable of, what you deserve, what's possible for someone like you. And the painful truth is that most people never question those stories. They repeat them. They live inside them. They defend them. They even build their entire identity around them. What they don't understand is that identity isn't something you find. It's something you decide, something you shape, something you choose moment by moment. But as long as you hold onto the stories that limit you, you keep shaping your identity into something smaller than who you are. There comes a moment when you finally see that the story you've been living is outdated. It belongs to a version of you that no longer exists. The belief that you're not enough, the fear of failing, the doubt in your abilities, the idea that you're meant to stay stuck. Those stories were created in a moment of weakness or pain and then carried into a lifetime of decisions. But you are not the same person who formed them. You have more experience now, more strength, more awareness. You've overcome challenges that the past version of you couldn't have survived. Yet those old stories still whisper in your mind, trying to anchor you to your past. And because the mind seeks familiarity, it grabs onto those limiting stories as if they're truth. But truth is not what you believed, it's what you decide from this moment forward. When you challenge a limiting story, you're not just shifting your thoughts, you're reshaping your identity at the deepest level. You begin to see that every time you said, I can't, it wasn't you speaking, it was fear. Every time you said, I don't deserve this, it wasn't you, it was conditioning. Every time you said, I'm not capable, it wasn't reality. It was a story created to protect you from pain. But protection is not the same as growth. And the moment you recognize that, you finally start reclaiming your power. Because the identity you've been living isn't permanent. It's fluid. It's moldable. It's something you can rewrite at any time. The question is whether you're willing to release what's familiar to step into what's possible. Most people wait for proof before changing their story. They wait for success before believing they're capable. They wait for validation before believing they're worthy. They wait for a perfect moment before believing they're ready. But that's not how transformation works. You don't change your identity because you achieve something. You achieve something because you change your identity first. The moment you choose a new story, your actions shift, your energy shifts, your decisions shift. And the world responds to that shift. You stop negotiating with your limitations. You stop trying to justify your fears. You stop letting the past write the script of your future. Shattering the stories that limit your identity is about stepping into your truth rather than your history. It's about honoring who you've become instead of clinging to who you used to be. It's about choosing a new narrative that reflects your strength, your potential, and your vision for what's possible. And once you see yourself through that new lens, everything in your life begins to align with the person you were always meant to be. Rewiring your mind to step into your highest potential begins with understanding that your brain is constantly shaping your reality based on what you repeatedly think, feel, and believe. Most people live their entire lives on mental autopilot, replaying the same patterns, reacting the same way, making the same choices, and wondering why nothing changes. They don't realize that their mind is wired to prioritize what's familiar, even if the familiar is destructive. The mind gravitates towards certainty, and certainty often comes from old beliefs, old fears, and old emotional patterns. To rise to a higher level, you have to interrupt that automatic cycle and consciously create new pathways, new associations, new meanings, new standards for who you are and how you show up. The first step is awareness. You cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. Most limitations live in the subconscious, operating silently, influencing how you interpret situations and how you respond to opportunities. When you slow down long enough to observe your thought patterns, you begin noticing the subtle but powerful beliefs that shape your identity. You hear yourself thinking, I don't think I can do this, or people like me don't succeed, or what if I fail? And you start to understand how these beliefs create invisible boundaries around your potential. Once you see the pattern, you gain the power to disrupt it. You recognize that these thoughts aren't facts, they're habits. They're echoes from moments in your past, not predictions of your future. Rewiring the mind requires repetition, emotion, and conscious choice. The brain doesn't change because you think a single positive thought. It changes when you consistently choose thoughts that align with who you want to become rather than who you've been. Every time you interrupt a negative belief, you weaken the neural pathway associated with it. And every time you reinforce a new empowering belief, you strengthen a new neural pathway. Over time, the brain begins to default to these new patterns automatically. This is how transformation works. Not through sudden breakthroughs alone, but through daily conditioning, through training your mind the way you train your body. To step into your highest potential, you must also upgrade the emotional meaning you attach to challenges. Most people see obstacles as signs that they're not capable or that things aren't working. But the mind can be trained to interpret challenges as growth signals, as proof that you're expanding beyond your old limits. When you shift the emotional meaning, you shift the entire experience. What once triggered fear can begin to trigger determination. What once created doubt can begin to create clarity. What once made you pull back can now push you forward. Your emotional wiring determines how you act under pressure, and how you act under pressure determines the results you create. Another essential piece of rewiring your mind is raising your standards. The mind is heavily influenced by the identity you claim. If your identity is built around being average, your actions will be average. If your identity is built around being unstoppable, your actions will reflect that. The moment you raise your standards, what you allow, what you tolerate, what you expect from yourself, you send a message to your mind, this is who I am now. From that point forward, the brain begins filtering information, opportunities, and decisions through the lens of this upgraded identity. You stop making choices that align with fear and start making choices that align with your future. Your highest potential isn't something you find outside yourself. It's something you unlock from within by removing the mental noise, dismantling old beliefs, and replacing them with patterns that elevate you. Your mind becomes your greatest ally instead of your greatest barrier. You begin to think in a way that it supports your goals rather than sabotaging them. You start seeing possibilities where you used to see limits. You respond with courage where you once responded with hesitation. And slowly you rise. Not because the world changed, but because your internal structure, the blueprint that drives your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, transform from the inside out. Stepping into your highest potential happens the moment you realize that your mind is not fixed. It is adaptable, moldable, trainable. It becomes whatever you consistently feed it. And when you choose to feed it empowering beliefs, courageous actions, elevated standards, and a compelling vision of who you're becoming, your entire life begins to align with that new level of consciousness.